Usually when you do research about how to get the film look for your photos or videos, the first thing you usually run across is getting some type of diffusion filter to bloom those highlights and take the edge off the digital sharpening in our cameras. But the thing is, not all film has bloomed highlights, and bloomed highlights is not the only aspect in what makes the film look. The next thing you'll learn about is the colors that you get with film, and they usually recommend some type of film LUT that gives you film-like colors on your footage. But the problem with that is it all depends on the camera that you use, the settings you use for that camera, and how you even apply the LUT when you're in your editing process. Anybody that has shot on film before will tell you that bloomed highlights and colors are not the only reason why they shoot on film. If that's the case, people wouldn't spend so much money buying rolls of film to go shoot their photography or their videos if it was just simply bloomed highlights and colors. A company called Dehancer has created a plugin that, in my opinion, is the most comprehensive and easiest way to get a much more organic film look than slapping on a diffusion filter or buying some LUT pack that is made to give you a film look. Dehancer does work for both photos and videos, and I'll be showing you in DaVinci Resolve, but it also works for Premiere, Final Cut, Photoshop, Lightroom. They even have an iPhone app. So pretty much any program that you use to edit on, there's a version of Dehancer for that. Right out of the gate, you have to tell the program what camera you use and the settings you use on that camera so that the program knows what type of footage it's working with, so that when you do apply all the rest of the settings, it keeps in mind that, oh, this footage comes from this camera and it was shot this way. That's far different from a LUT because LUTs don't take into account of the type of camera that you use or the picture profile that you use or any of that. Going into the next section is your basic exposure, white balance, and tint controls. So make sure that your footage is at least starting off in a decent spot before we start tweaking and editing things further. There are a lot of photo and video film stocks available from Fuji, Kodak, Cinestill, and many others. And there's even an option to push or pull the film. If you don't know what it means to push or pull film, film is typically rated at a specific ISO. So Kodak Portra 400 is 400 ISO film. So when you shoot with your film camera, you're taking into account that your ISO level is already at 400. And when you push or pull film, you over or underexpose the film stock that you're using. So you might have Portra 400 in your camera, but you might expose at ISO 800. Or you might expose at a lower ISO because it gives you a different look on that same film stock. Moving on to film compression, this is one of my favorite aspects of Dehancer because film is known for having a lot of dynamic range, and film handles highlights far differently than digital cameras do. In your videos or photos, when you have clipped highlights, that's almost a dead giveaway that it was shot on a digital camera because film doesn't quite handle highlights the same way. When you overexpose film, the highlights don't just clip and go to pure white on film the same way that they do on a digital camera. Film compression allows you to pull those highlights down and give them a much more organic look than you would with any other highlight slider in your editing program. It almost gives the impression that your camera has more dynamic range than it actually has. Now keep in mind, you still can't give Dehancer clip footage. It's not gonna bring back highlights that aren't there. It's just gonna help you take the highlights and bring them down into a more natural, organic look than the digital camera would naturally have compared to film. The expand tab is where you set your black point and your white point and basically control the contrast ratio in your footage. So depending on how punchy or how flat you want the image to be, you can adjust the black and white points to get that. The print section is also pretty interesting because imagine if you shoot an entire movie on film. Well, you shot it on film and you want to display it in a projector that uses film, right? So you have to take the film that you shot the movie on and print it on a different film stock. Well, of course, when you go from one film and print it on another film, that new film will introduce new characteristics to the final output. So when you print film on a different film, you get a new look. And the same way goes with photos. When you take a picture on film and you print it on paper, the photo being printed on paper will give it a slightly different look because it's going to take on the characteristics of whatever paper you printed it on. So this section replicates basically the transferring of the film you shot whatever it is on to the film or paper that you're printing it or releasing it or showing it on. The color head section is an extension of that because imagine when you send pictures off to get printed, Everyone has different printers, they use different inks, they have different adjustments in the printers. So this section basically allows you to replicate different printer settings with the different balances of ink levels and stuff that you would get on various printers. Film grain is pretty self-explanatory. I think we all know what that is, but it allows you to control the intensity and look of the film. And you also get to control how it looks in the highlights, shadows, and midtones. So if you like the way that the film grain looks, but you want your shadows to be clean, you can adjust that here. Halation is another one of those very specific film effects. Film is made up of many layers, and as light passes through those layers, it doesn't pass through perfectly, and some of the light bounces around between the layers of film and creates this red glow around areas of contrast. It's typically a very subtle effect, and Dehancer allows you to apply a mask so you can see how much of this halation effect that you're adding, just in case you can't really see it as you're editing. Bloom is another easy one. That's what those diffusion filters do, but the benefit of being able to add bloom in editing is that you can always adjust how much or how little you want to add. Because if you take a diffusion filter and you go out and shoot, if the filter was too strong, you can't remove any of the bloom. And if it wasn't strong enough, you can't add any of the bloom. And you also still need a diffusion filter. So that means you have to buy multiple strengths of diffusion filters and sometimes multiple sizes to fit your different lenses, and hope that you don't use the one that's too strong or not strong enough for whatever project you're working on. Well, Dehancer allows you to just add as much or as little as you want in editing, and you don't have to worry about the filter. The next section is Vignette, and I'm pretty sure we all know what that is. So let's move on to film breath and gate weave. Film breath factors in the imperfections of film. So film is a physical man-made material, which means every individual frame of film will be slightly different from every other frame in that roll. So that means that every frame in any video that you film has its own characteristics. One frame might be slightly more exposed than the other, one frame might be a little warmer, one frame might be a little cooler. There are slight variations between every frame in a video roll. So if you really pay attention when a roll of film is playing, you'll see slight imperfections as the video plays out. Along with that, gate weave is basically simulating the film being ran through a projector, and the slight little movements that it makes will shake the image, of course. So gate weave pretty much moves the footage left and right, simulating what it looks like when it's going through a projector. So as you can see, Dehancer is a very complete plugin that goes beyond just a diffusion filter or a LUT. It is dedicated to pulling out as many aspects of film as possible and giving you full control of all of those aspects so that you can apply it however you see fit. At the bottom, there's even a slider to help you turn down the entire intensity of the plugin, just in case you realize by the time you get to the bottom that you went a little too far. And if you have a look that you consistently use, you can always export your final look as a LUT to use on your camera monitor as you're shooting, so you can view what the footage will look like as you're shooting. Now, Dehancer did not sponsor this video, but they did provide me with a discount code that'll help you save 10% on Dehancer if you so choose to pick it up. Be sure to let me know in the comments what feature of Dehancer stands out the most to you, and if you learned anything about film in general. I hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you guys in the next video.